My name is Iku Mwanjisi. I'm the co-founder of Shule Direct Tanzania. I'm glad to know that some people know about it. Is there anyone who's ever used it? Because we started a long time ago. Oh, awesome. What year did you use it? Sorry? Mwaka gani? Yeah, mwaka gani? 16. Nice. So we actually started in 2013. So I was asked to talk about my background. Personally, I've done project management. I tried kidogo computer science, then I realized it wasn't my line. I've worked in advertising, I've worked in construction for real estate, and I've also worked in construction for telecom industries. And I think that was the longest part of my career. I used to work in project management, building cell sites for most of these mobile network operators here in Tanzania and Rwanda. And so I think personally I was privileged when I was going through secondary education. I was privileged to go to a private school, and I was introduced to computers at a very young age. I think if I say, then you'll all know my age, but I started learning computers in 1994, and I was introduced to internet wakati ule ilikuwa Netscape. I think Dr. Mgumia atakuwa nakumbuka how slow it used to be, but then you would spend maybe a whole hour just reading one email. But then that's the time I started using internet, and I remember at that time I used to think it was so revolutionary, and I just couldn't imagine what it will mean to the world, the revolution of technology. So 2013, a friend of mine, Faraja Nyalandu, and myself, we decided to start Shule Direct. It was really a response to the bad results that we were seeing in this country. 2012, I think it was the first time we had the worst results when it comes to the Form 4 national examinations. There was already an idea in the works, and at that time the thought was to do something digital for universities, but then we thought, after those results, we were thinking that was the wrong area to focus. We should look into secondary space. So that's how we started. The idea was simple. How can we leverage technologies to make sure that many young Tanzanians can access qualified learning content? Because I think we all know in the Tanzanian context, learning is really just about passing an exam. And to pass an exam, I have to get the right teacher to give me the right notes. So if I don't have a teacher in my school, you find students would come during the school holidays. They're flogging all these places called tuition or after school classes, but nobody had regulated them. So we thought we can work with the Ministry of Education and try and regulate, standardize that content and make sure that everyone is accessing the same qualified content, but most importantly, that follows the national curriculum. So it's not just any content that you can find on the internet, but it makes it very relevant for the young Tanzanian learner. So that's how we started. We thought it would be so simple. We would get, teachers who were so switched on. At that time, we used to work with teachers from Korogo Teachers Training College, who used to have, I think at that time, it was state-of-the-art computer lab. But then when we engaged them, they told us that they're not going to type out notes, so they used to send us handwritten notes. All the way from Korogwe, tunaenda Ubungo, tunachukua boxi na boxi la notes. We have to start typing out. And then we started building the technologies just to make sure that now this content can be accessed through any device, and that is online and offline. So given 2013, internet penetration wasn't what it is today. Back then it was around 11%. Lakini that meant we were not going to reach all Tanzanian students at that time, but it was the easiest place to start. And I think for most of you startups, you keep hearing this, you have to have an MVP. You have to show something that there is a product. So for us, that is what it had to be. So it was easier to make it online, to be able to demonstrate what it is we're trying to achieve. So from there, we moved from our website, we started developing offline solutions. So we have a learning management system that's available offline, and we also have an SMS platform. And now we also have mobile applications. And we've moved beyond secondary education to cover also primary. We just launched that this year for standard 1 to 7. And in all our platforms now, we've opened them beyond students. We're doing for teachers. We're also doing for parents. I think with COVID, we had to make a move to include the parents in these platforms as well. So that's us in a nutshell. I don't know if I've covered my background enough. I would really love to allow for more time for you guys to speak. And yeah, I'd love to also learn more from you. And if you have any questions at this point, I would like to take them.
Don't put their heads together. You do that later. Let's answer questions first, right? Yeah. So who goes first?
Okay, so first of all, I didn't cheat. I didn't know she was the founder of the co-founder of Visual Dialect. Yeah. So I literally knew Faraja was the founder, but I didn't know about you. But I'm so excited to hear about what you have done and also the journey you have led. So for me, it's how did you integrate the government into your program? That's one. And second, because usually all of us or many of tech learners, we are really interested with the capital. And usually when you talk about something that does involve student who doesn't own smartphone, it's challenging for investors to think, okay, is this feasible, is this scalable? So how did you go about raising funds in order to do something like that? Also, as years goes by, how did you be able to make sure that parlance are integrated into the system, but also how the teachers were interested as time goes on. Yep, thank you.
So we started out as an NGO. So we weren't really thinking around the cost so much for the user in terms of the device, even though, yes, that was a factor to consider. But really it was a hypothesis that we're testing out, that perhaps this approach could be more cost effective if you consider the cost of printing books, distributing them in the entire country, making sure you have qualified teachers that can be sent all over, because the other challenge I think that the government had or still has is the fact that they have many teachers on paper, but not in reality on the ground. So we felt like technology could be a quick win in terms of making sure that students are learning, and they're learning from qualified content that is contextual, but then it's also cost effective in terms of, because when you're thinking of technology, it's not necessarily just it has to be on a computer. It can also be on radio, it can be on TV, but then it's thinking, where do you have this centralized portal that has all this content, and then you can pull it to any device that you can access. So this was the first thinking that we had. But from the onset, we had to think how, like, we are launching, but then how are we bringing the right stakeholders from the get-go? So we were also very intentional even in how we launched the event. So we tried to engage the Ministry of Education way before it was just an idea, but we involved the ministry. So we had an event to launch Shule Direct. We launched Shule Direct at Serena. We didn't have money and we didn't pay for it. So it helps to also talk to people nicely, and just, like, if you're very clear what your vision is, what your mission is, it's easy for somebody else to buy in and say, yes, I will support you. So Serena actually supported us with the venue, and we even went an extra mile and asked them, because we didn't have the money to pay for the food. So we decided to have like a cocktail event in the morning. But then we only asked for coffee and juice, and we asked them to allow us to bring in our own nuts. So we didn't even pay for the nuts that people ate. But then we had the Deputy Minister for Education at that time, and every other invitee was a potential donor for us. So that's how we thought about it. And it worked out because it was getting everyone in one room to pitch your idea in a different setting. We weren't saying, come so we can pitch to you an idea. It was more like, come, we're launching this really great thing in Tanzania you would love to be a part of. So from then, that's how we started creating these connections with the different donors that we've had. In terms of the costs for the user, so yes, there's data costs, but we work with mobile network operators. So for instance, with Vodacom, it's zero rated. I think also Airtel came on board, Tigo came on board during the pandemic for COVID. But Tigo came on board before that in 2016 when we were launching the first SMS platform. They agreed to zero rate it as well. Although it was for a very short time period, but it was zero rated at least for some time. And then after that, people were only paying 100 shillings for unlimited access of SMS per day. I'm not so sure if I have answered all your questions. Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Oh, there's something else. I think you talked about how getting the government involved. And I don't know if we're going to jump into the presentation session, that's another part that I'll talk about. But mainly it's, again, keep knocking those doors. At first, they will never understand. Like, I remember the first time we approached the Tanzania Institute of Education for... So our thinking at that time was, Ministry of Education has content. All we have to do is knock, ask for content, we take it, and we digitize it. But it wasn't that way. So we started creating this content. But then we wanted to get the approval because we want to go into schools. So when we first went to Thai, the very first time we had to actually burn CDs to submit our content to Thai. And with Thai, if you're doing, let's say, one subject, say physics, Form 1, that's one subject. If you say physics Form 1 and Form 2, those are two subjects. So for each subject, you have to submit 10 copies. So in our case, we had to submit, so it's 10 times 4 for 11 subjects. So you had to burn all those CDs, take these boxes of CDs to Thai, and then a month later you're following up, they tell you, oh, those CDs couldn't open or something happened. So it was such a process, but then we are glad that we did that because eventually Thai created an online portal. So for anybody else doing digital content today, they just submit it online. Yeah.
So we'll go straight to the session right now. I think we'll start counting and...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so...
But are you guys actually able to see the screen? I couldn't see from back there. No, visually. Oh, okay. So maybe it's my eyes. Great. So I've already started talking about what we're doing, and I thought it was a nice entryway with the session that we just heard from Bologna. So for me, when we're looking at EdTech today, different from when we started, I think it's very important to consider the fourth industrial revolution and how it relates to education, or how is education related to industrial revolution. So I think in the history of education, education actually is more or less, it's pushed by these industrial revolutions. So industrial revolutions, all these waves as they're coming, so many things have to change around our education. So with the first industrial revolution, where the greatest discovery was steam, and it brought all these people now from the farms into cities where they're working in industries. So that's where we started having this formal classroom education, because now somebody had to learn how to operate those machineries. So as the technology grows, so has the need for our education been growing. And I think now when we're coming to the fourth industrial revolution, we're looking at the cloud-based technology, because that has also brought with it unlimited, it's limitless in terms of the capacities that we have today. We've moved away from, I used to work with a floppy disk. I don't know if anyone knows a floppy disk here. Those floppy disks used to have like, I think the biggest size were like 5 KB. Yeah. So now think from that time, and we used to store information in those things. Now think today, if you're told you have something that has a capacity of just 1 MB, like how you're frustrated. So this is what now the cloud technology is bringing to us. These are the possibilities. So with that, we also see what it means in terms of our education. So interestingly, I feel like we're still in the third industrial revolution when we're looking at our education. So in the third industrial revolution, what happened was there was a growth of technology, but there was a lot of push in terms of what should people learn. So there was a time when everyone was doing IT because it was the thing. So it wasn't like somebody was born and say, I will always want to do IT. It's just that there's a time you start hearing things and you're like, oh, okay, I should do IT. So the same thing happened with oil and gas. So it's pushing that drive. But then with the fourth industrial revolution, we really don't know what you should be. Nobody can tell you what you should learn. Because to put it in perspective, I think it was 2013. The first 6 months of 2013, the amount of data that was generated in the world was the most amount of data generated ever since the first computer was discovered. So all that time up to 2013, that was the most amount of data that was generated. And after that, every 6 months, it doubles. So we are generating a lot of data that we are even we can't catch up to process it, to analyze it, and decide what is this data or this information actually telling us. So with that, it's very difficult to predict today and say, this is what somebody should be tomorrow. I don't know if I'm making sense. Great. So with that comes now Education 4.0. So what does that really mean for us? What I see is that with Education 4.0, this is where we're talking more around innovation. We're talking more about, and I think they're also talking about it in the panel that just ended. You have these graduates who are not employable. Because somehow our education did not move. Our education focused on you should get an A if you're a science student, you should get your A's in your sciences and you're good. How many of us actually, tulipokuwa chuo, tukiambiwa fanya presentation, we were like, yes, I'll do it, because that's my thing. Yes, so our education ilisahau hicho. And today, those are the most important skills. So it's not only that you have to be relevant in, I know my physics very well, or I know my mathematics very well, whatever subject. If you don't have these, what they call soft skills, you are irrelevant. So somehow we need to catch up quickly. And you might agree with me, or maybe you don't, but from where I stand and what I see in our classrooms today, we really need to revolutionize how we're teaching very fast. And how do we bring that out? We need to bring back what I always go and talk to teachers and I tell them we need to bring back that why question. In some point in our lives, we were not allowed to ask why. Because everything we're taught to say is what, how. That's it. What's your name? My name. It's very simple. If you ask me my name, it's simple, I'll tell you. If you ask me how did you get here today, it's very simple, I'll tell you. But if you ask me why did I come here today, it's not very simple. But we need to start allowing that why question. This is where the innovation will come. This is where now we're bringing in those soft skills to be able to communicate what I know. Because initially, all we did was learn, sit for a paper, I write, and I go. And it was good enough that I can come, I can knock on doors, I can come to Costec, I'm looking for work, I'll give you my papers, you will hire me. But now it's more about, okay, there's so many people with A's, so how do we differentiate each other? How do we actually solve problems beyond that A? So this is where now the soft skills come in. And the other way that we can actually ensure that we're building these soft skills, because you can't teach soft skills. The other way we need to ensure we're building these soft skills is creating a classroom that puts the learner in the center. Before this, we are learning the teacher is the center, the teacher is the authority, the teacher is the one who has the knowledge, is just coming to dispense the knowledge to the classroom. But now, the teacher has also to be a learner, has to just be a facilitator for their learners, so they can explore and discover together. But we understand in our African, in our Tanzanian context, ni vibaya sana mwalimu kuonekana hajui. But that thinking now is what has to change really quickly. So this is where we will get to innovation-based education. So as much as all these efforts we're having with the government, reviewing our curriculum, but if we're not going to change how we're delivering the content, we're not going to get here. We're going to be stuck at 3IR, unfortunately. So for anyone who's aspiring to do education, edtech, please start considering these as well. Because we want competent learners who have empathy, who have these soft skills, who the only thing that we want them to learn is to learn how to learn. That's it. Because with all this information and all these things that we don't know, you just need to be in a world where you can adjust, you can quickly adapt, you can learn from your environment and create solutions in that time where you are. Because today we really can't tell people what they should be. I was inspired, I think there was an exhibition at the British Council, and there were these kids who came. And yes, they were from a private school. These 6-year-olds and 9-year-olds, they were given a day to just come up with a solution for something. And these kids, they came up with a solution for a vacuum cleaner for the ocean floor. And I was like, hey, who even thinks of the ocean floor? But these are the things that they know. So they were thinking you can create a vacuum cleaner to clean the ocean floor because of all these debris that we are disposing and putting into the sea, and how it eventually will be detrimental to ourselves. So they're already thinking of that today. So this, again, I can tell you there's no cause that you can teach somebody to think like that. You can only teach them to empathize. You can only teach them to learn about their environment. So essentially, Education 4.0 is talking about context intelligence. That's what I'm talking about, understanding your environment and being relevant in your environment. Social intelligence, how do you actually relate to people? How do we communicate? How do we empathize with each other? Then there's emotional intelligence. This is also becoming a big thing right now. And I know before we used to talk about IQ, but now people are also trying to measure people's EQs, their emotional quotient. It's also important. Then there's the physical intelligence as well. So we really need to start changing our own minds in terms when we're looking at education. So this is currently what we have for Tanzania in terms of the primary and secondary space, and secondary is only up to Form 4. We're about 13 million children. But then you have 5,800 secondary schools for 2.5 million kids who are in Form 1 to Form 4. And then you have 11 million kids who are in primary, and we only have 19,000 primary schools. And that number hasn't been growing drastically, because I think when we were starting out, we only had about 4,000 secondary schools. So 2013 to 2022, we've only added just less than 2,000 schools. So we can see the challenges that we already have. And for instance, this year, Form 4s are sitting for their exams. We're having about, I think, 500,000 kids who are going to sit for their national exams this year. But when you look at the number, when they started Form 1, there were 700,000. So there's about 180-something thousand kids who have not made it to Form 4, just in that one batch alone. So we also need to start asking ourselves, how do these kids learn then, if they're not in school? So this is where we're thinking as the opportunities for EdTech can come in, to help even those who are not in school to also continue to learn. Because imagine if you're in Form 1 and you're 14, and that's all you've done, then what happens to you in your life? So these are the things that we have to start considering. Now, when we're looking at the EdTech landscape in Tanzania, 2013, we didn't have much to go on with in terms of who to benchmark or reference to, but we've seen things changing, things are moving, and to date, I think we have over 20 EdTech startups in Tanzania in different ways, different fields. And the other thing that you also have to understand is when you're talking about EdTech, there's the mainstream academia, but there's also anything that's learning related that's using technology. And then what we've also seen slowly, we're gaining that momentum. There's more interest from the academia. And this is very important for us because as we were starting out, as I said, there was no reference point. There are no researchers. We don't have enough research around EdTech in Tanzania. So now as we're having more and more interest from universities and learning institutions, it's a good thing because now we'll have more evidence, whether it works, what really works, what doesn't work, et cetera, et cetera. And then we've had, as I started explaining a little bit, the interest from the government. So we've been working with the Ministry of Education through TAI. We're working very closely also with COSTECH. So it's also a win, I think, in this space when you're looking at the landscape of EdTech from when we started. Then, for me, these I would say are more or less achievements. Since we've started, we've seen a lot stakeholder engagement. As I said, we intentionally started with a few, but then over the time, we've seen more coming in. We've seen so many initiatives right now. You're seeing even with Vodacom, they have I think it's called, I always confuse, there's one that's free and one that's a business. There's a classroom and there's a school from Vodacom. And then we had Tigo eSchools, which is an initiative where they were distributing computers in schools, putting internet. So we're seeing a lot of such initiatives from different unconventional players, I would say. We're also working with the development partners, the UNESCO's, UNICEF. Even UNICEF has actually supported the development of the primary school platform that we have. But we've also seen an increase when it comes to digital literacy. So for me, this is an argument. There are people who say our digital skills, our digital literacy is very low. But I feel that if there is a need, somebody will just learn. Like because if I look at the time I used to work in the telecom industry, you are creating an opportunity for somebody to access the network in a place where there was no network before. And suddenly, people are able to use those phones, even if they don't speak English. And the phones back then weren't as advanced as they are today. Back then, everything was in English. The manual came in English. But somehow, somebody will figure out how to use it because it was a necessity. So we can see that there's been a lot of changes in our behaviors and our affinity towards the use of technology. As we've seen even in the just ended census from the government, we've at least started to go digital as well. And we've also seen some edtech startups from Tanzania who've gone cross borders, the likes of Ubongo, who's now broadcasting in more than 13 African countries. They started at the same time as us, in the same office with us in 2013. With all the successes, yes, there are challenges. We do have challenges. The first one, as I said, is evidence in terms of data, in terms of the research, but also because of the infancy of edtech in Tanzania. So even if somebody was to do research, say 6 years ago, maybe there wasn't much to go on with, but now I believe we will have more evidence around edtech. And then there's also the factor that the lady there just mentioned about cost. Of course, these things are going to cost. The infrastructure, the internet, connectivity, the electricity, so all these are part of the cost factors. And then the availability of digital content. There just isn't enough digital content out there, especially in Tanzania. So there's an opportunity as well. And also, we haven't fully managed to solve the challenge of inclusion when it comes to learning. So inclusion is looking at learning differences and not necessarily disabilities, not necessarily physical disabilities. There are a lot of unseen, invisible learning disabilities. So there are issues around the people who are visual learners, the people who are kinetic learners, the people who are audio learners, there are people who are autistic. Si tunajua autism, usonji. Ile sio kwamba hauna capacity ya kujifunza. Yeah, sisi ndio hatuna capacity ya kukufundisha. They're very smart, they're very sharp, but it's just that the normal classroom doesn't have the capacity to teach the child. So we are not at a place where we can say we've used technology to make sure that everyone is learning, because that's our intention. So that's a challenge. The opportunities, as I say, there's a lot of opportunities to continue researching in this space. There's opportunities to leverage technology to ensure gender equity in learning. So again, also bringing in the inclusion, making sure that everyone is included when it comes to learning, but also revolutionizing learning. I don't believe, as we're moving forward, especially in this fourth industrial revolution, where we still want to get stuck that somebody has to do a degree in physics, or somebody has to do PCM in order to do that. That has to change. That has to change immediately. People should learn based on their strengths, because ultimately we will need everyone to solve the challenges that we're going to have in the future. And as I said earlier, also it's an opportunity to be able to serve the out-of-school youth as well, using technology. And lastly, looking at teachers' professional development. Are there any teachers in this room here right now? Oh, great. Uko wapi? Ah, right. So one challenge we have with teachers, wakishatoka chuo, akiingia shule, kuendelea ni kwa mbinde sana. Unless they're motivated themselves, unless you work in a place where your district education officer is that motivated to want their teachers to be developed, or you're working with a headmaster, headmistress who's that motivated. Otherwise, it's really, really difficult. So, and again, in all fairness, sometimes you're also looking at the environment you're in, how few you are. If you also leave, you're feeling sorry for the kids that you have. So we're also looking at technology as an opportunity to ensure that teachers can have this continuous professional development even while they're still in schools. So I don't know if you can see this, but this is essentially just our theory of change, moving from the traditional model of education to a more digital model of education. And this is borrowed from Finland's model of education called Summary in short. It's looking at technology in different stages. So the first stage, of course, is substitution, where we are looking at how you can create a book into PDF, and then you have it on a platform, but it doesn't have any additional functionalities. But then moving from there, you have augmentation, where now technology can start acting as a tool as well, as a substitute of some function. So for instance, that same book you have it now online, and I can actually interact with it. Maybe I read, I get a question, I can answer, and then the system is giving me some response. So that's different from just having a textbook that is static. Then we can now start looking at modification. So how can technology start allowing for some significant task redesigning? So again, how we're teaching in the classroom, how people are learning generally. Perhaps this is where we can come to a place where I'm not in school, but I can still learn and I can get a recognition. Then lastly is coming now to redefinition. So this is where we're hoping to get to, where we can actually redefine education through technology. But then it's going to require all of us. It's not just the government, it's not just the learners, not just the schools, it's everyone. And up to now, we have about 3.6 million users who've gone through Shule Direct since we started. And most of our users are on the web platform. Interestingly now, we're seeing an increase in users who use a mobile phone to access the website. So there's an app, but they will still come to a mobile phone and access the website. So 74% of these users actually use a mobile phone to access the website, which is, for some reason, I feel it's very interesting. And then, yes, as I said, we have a lot of the web users because the offline, again, the challenges that we have, we talked about getting the devices into the schools. So it's all about getting the right partners to work with that we can go with into these schools. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you. Very awesome. I want to allow you to ask some. We have another mic, right? Where's the other mic? So I'll allow for brief questions. We'll say what you will have.
Okay. First of all, this is a great presentation. I really enjoyed it. You touch about you guys are working with the Minister of Education. So in this era of for IARA, how are you guys talking with the Minister of Education on how to change our system in education? Our system is preparing most of the students to the jobs which are going in the next few years, which are not going to be there. So our system of education is not compatible for IARA. How are you guys able to implement that? So since you already explained it in your EdTech presentation, how are you guys being able to talk with the Minister of Education on that? And how, this is a second question, how are you guys going to implement that? Because our education system does not give you an opportunity to be an entrepreneur, you know that. So it's preparing for the jobs which are not there in the near future. In the future, we need AI, ML, machine learning, gamification. In most of the system, we don't have that. So how are you guys able to talk to how far have you come, or what is it you guys are doing? So that's my question.
Yeah, so thank you. So there's a number of initiatives. There's a number of ways that we've been doing to answer your first question. So we've been also very intentional with everything we're doing. We put our reports open and making sure that they're getting to the right ears or the right eyes to read, for that matter. So we've been documenting everything, like what works, what doesn't work. We've been open about that. And we've also been intentional in terms of who we partner with. So working through umbrella networks. For instance, we're members of the Tanzania Education Network. That is one umbrella that the government or the Ministry of Education actually has a special committee where the chairperson of this umbrella is a co-chair with the Ministry of Education when overseeing issues around education. And I think in all fairness, a lot has been happening. A lot has changed. There was an education sector development review. We had the one that is ending this year, and now they've just created the one for the next 5 years. And in that, you see a lot of these inclusions, especially when you're looking at technology, when you're looking at digital. So all these things are already there. But what we also have to understand, to conceptualize 4IR, I can tell you there's no one person who can say, this is what we have to do and we will get it right. Everybody has to do something. Everybody has to take their own approach. Because again, it comes back to context. What's my context? What's my environment like? What will be a solution for my environment? So it will take all of us. It will take changing our teachers, the mindset, agreeing that we should have another way of delivering our education. For me, I don't feel that our curriculum has any issues, even though we're still reviewing it. I honestly don't feel that it has issues. The only concern is how do we deliver it? And the other component that's also very important to understand now is technology is no longer a thing that you go in a classroom to learn about. It's just a part of our everyday life. So maybe there's no need to say, I'm going to have a class to teach somebody how to use a computer. Because, for instance, with the offline learning management system, it's always interesting for me. We go into a place, you find a child who's never even held a phone. You just put this thing, give them a laptop, and just sit back. In 5 minutes, they've already figured it out. Because as we are advancing, technology is also becoming simpler and simpler to use, because it's something that we all need for everyday life. It's no longer a thing for those specialized minds to use. So perhaps there's no need to have special classes just for digital, but if you have a digital device in the classroom, somebody will learn it as they're learning something else. So I think that's what's most important, I could say, for your first question. Did I answer your second question? Was how we're implementing it. So for me, it's not a question of, when we were starting, the end that we had in mind, when we were starting out Shule Direct, the end that we had in mind is the government adopts this. And I feel we are getting there, because beyond working with Ministry of Education, we've just signed a memorandum of understanding with TAMISEMI as well. Because now TAMISEMI is coming with the school information system. They are willing to use our learning management system as part of the e-learning component. So if we can move towards that, I think we can take leaps instead of just saying we will do this on our own, or we will find another small partner to work with. But if you are working with the government, it means then we'll be then we'll be in all the schools in the country. So it's not a question of how we'll do it ourselves, but how can everybody do it, and how can we continue influencing through what we are learning, through what we are finding out, for somebody else to also use that information to do something perhaps differently in a better way. Yeah.
Awesome. So I'll take only, I'm sorry, but I just have to take one question at the back. Yeah. And also tomorrow.
Thank you. And congratulations once again for the work you are doing. My question is, have you ever thought of helping the university students who are adult
accommodate this kind of environment for special cases for that matter. But in a solution that I can say is this template that we have that anybody can use. It can be customized. Okay, I didn't say fearless because I'm not men. Carry on. I was about to say that since we don't have to use that.
So I wanted to ask, so how do you make, is there like a profit out of Shule Direct? That's one. And second, how do you make EduTech into a business more, because I believe people take it seriously. Wow. Similar to what is being done from wanasema hizi shule outside from school wanaoliciti, like from for leavers. They need to pay in order to get the education and receipt and then do exam and come back to school again. When wakienda from 6 year work wanaenda shule. So I wanted to get are you guys thinking of that, and how do you see the future of edutech into a business level?
So in Tanzania, I feel edtech to work as a business can work if you looking at university and beyond. So if you're looking at in-service training, if you're looking at university students, that can work. Below that, it's very difficult. So we exist as an NGO. We started out as a social enterprise because we felt it's more about the impact of what you're trying to create more than it being a business, but we wanted it to be an entity that can sustain itself, so not just being entirely dependent on grants. If the donor changes their focus, then that means you have to wrap up your program and go, but we didn't want that. So that's why we started out as a social enterprise. But then 2019, when the laws changed, the business laws changed, so we had to become a fully fledged NGO, which is what we are now. So we're not a business. But prior to 2019, we already figured out what I just said before, that we really can't monetize this market. So for instance, when we were starting out with the SMS platform, the intention was to not make it free. The intention was to make it, I think we were looking like somewhere between 100 to 250 shillings. But then it came with so many challenges, because the first challenge that we faced was the mobile network operator would not agree to, so for instance, if you're buying 500 shillings a day on a mobile phone, we would say out of that, take out 100 for this SMS program. The mobile network operator would say no. So you would buy your 500 shillings, and for this SMS you have to buy an extra 100 shillings. But then the first challenge was with the mobile network operator, they didn't believe it would work. So they gave us 3 months to reach a subscriber base of 20,000. We reached 20,000 in 2 days. And then in those 3 months, we were somewhere like 100,000 people who were using it because it was free. Like they really didn't believe in it. They were like, we'll do it for free for 3 months. And then because they thought maybe in 3 months we'll not reach 20,000, but we reached. But then the minute now we introduced the 100 shillings charge, numbers went down. Now we start following up, like these users, what's really happening, why, you know. And the thing that people tell you is like, this is education, you should give it to me for free. Now, the flip side of that, we go into Kenya. This is education. If it's really good, I'll pay whatever amount of money for it. So there's also like our own mentality, and I think it's fair. Like if you're looking at the government is saying your basic education for the first 12 years should be free, then why should we be coming and charging? And especially because we're focusing with public school students, which is about 97% of those schools that I mentioned. So what we figured is we can create like a freemium model. So there's always basic content that's free. But then if you want experiences, now these experiences are the gamified part of those content. Those are the things that you can pay for. But it's not like I cannot present it as a business case. I tell you that this is so much money that we're making out of this now. Yeah. But yeah, if you're thinking of monetizing, either think how you can monetize from the higher levels, or how you will have a different kind of customer, not your user. So your user cannot be your customer. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So how did you find the session? It was awesome, right? So you can, I don't have the fancy way of saying like let's congratulate her and all that, but you know better, right? So you can just put our hands together. Thank you so much, Iku. That was awesome, but the best part is she'll be with us tomorrow the whole day. So we'll have all the time, huh? Yeah, so I'll be at the backstage tomorrow, and then she'll be at the front. It's awesome. I'm so I'm officially. This is beautiful. Anyway, so other than that, she's a co-facilitator, and tomorrow she'll be in charge. And so I think tomorrow you have so much than what you had today. Yeah, because I'm just a guy from nowhere, and now you know, right? Do you guys even know what I do? I don't think they know what I do.
You didn't introduce yourself.
And I'm not, I'll introduce myself tomorrow. Yeah, anyways, but I hope the session was a bit, not so awesome, but a bit kidogo, right? Yeah, okay, beautiful. No power is gone, but doesn't mean like you cannot do something still. You have your phones, right? And you can access the internet, and they have power, right? Yeah, so the next session, if you remember, I was telling you like there were 2 rooms, huh? Yeah. So there is a room which is written ALU event live stream, right? Aula, yeah. So that's the where you need to go, where you need to go for the fintech session. So it's not like you won't have access to fintech session, but you need to go using your phone. So even this power, technology is a good thing, huh? So even when the power is gone, still with technology you can still get access to the sessions, right? Through this platform. I hope all of us here have access to the platform, right? Yes. That's awesome. Yeah, so you just go to Aula event. That's when, and what's the time again? That the fintech session will be on. Does anyone know? Whatever time you will see in the agenda, plus 2 hours, right? Yeah, so that's what you do. So if you go to the agenda, you check fintech panel, and then it's written fintech. Let me just check for you. Yeah, so it's according to this, it's 1630. 1630 plus 2, I'm not very good in mathematics. It's 830. It's 830. 16 plus 2 is 8. 18. Okay. Yeah, so it's 18 or what? 630, right? So that's when you can go in it. But before that, there are other sessions which are also ongoing. And I think in the morning I showed you how you can tell which session is happening when, right? So when you go to the agenda, you will see which room you need to go to access that particular session. So you can do that right now and proceed. But also you can network and all those things. If you have not put in your profile, I hope you can use today to put on your profile and anything that you're offering or you want, right? So you can do all that. But before we close, I would like to ask people to come and share with us like what we should expect for tomorrow. But anyway, there are some expectations. I think you will see them. They're here. So people in the morning, they set expectations. We'll go through again tomorrow in these expectations. Just to remind ourselves what our expectations is, what we have been able to achieve at least for today, but tomorrow we'll review them before we start the session and we'll proceed from there. But for tomorrow's session, as I said, it will be more on issues, right? So we'll be discussing issues, and there are 4 sessions. They're called what? World Cafe. So World Cafe, the idea, should I explain the idea or you come and explain the idea? I don't want to spoil it for you.
Please
so
explain.
I'll just, oh really?
Please explain. That's
Alright, awesome. No problem. Yeah, so you know the cafe idea, right? You go in the cafe, in the cafe, and then you meet with people, you make story, you exchange. Yeah, but this is not the car, right? Yeah, so these are kind of stories which are like, how do I put them? Like they're meaningful. I'm not saying like the car, they're not meaningful stories, no. But like you meet in the cafe and then you talk about stuff. So that's the idea. And we're going to have like 3 tables or 3 groups where like as participants you'll be moving from one table to the next table after every 30 minutes. 30 minutes, half an hour, right? So we'll have 2 hours for World Cafe. And what will happen, we'll have speakers, so we'll have 4 different speakers. These 4 different speakers will be stationary, but we'll be moving from one speaker to the next every 30 minutes. And each table, it will have a specific topic that will be discussed in that table. But those topics I already mentioned, what we had today. What did we have in the morning? What was the first session about? It was about agritech. Awesome. It was about what? And then we had the next session, it was? Awesome. The third session which we just had right now. And then you know what will be the last session for today, right? Yeah, so even tomorrow, those will be like in the table, that's what we'll have, but there will be specific topics that will be discussed, because these are the major things, and then we'll have specific topics that we'll be discussing tomorrow. They'll be awesome, so don't plan to miss. So we'll go through, and then so we'll discuss issues. Issues are event-science, opportunities and challenges. I hope I'm not too fast. Opportunities, challenges, but also we'll be able to ask questions and things like that, maybe from what has transpired from our today's session. So, yeah, so things will be cool. And then after that, we'll have a presentation also from our facilitators, from those tables. They'll come and share like what is the output of all the round of discussions. Yeah, and then from there, I think we will see what will come out of that. But I want to encourage you, use the platform right now, get access to the sessions, network, request meetings, and all that. So, yeah, any question? I was talking too fast. Oh, I was worried of running out of power. That's why I was talking too fast so that like, I don't run out of power. You know, your phone, when the power is off, your phone can go out of power anytime. So I was worrying about running out of power. But you got me, right? Okay, awesome. If there are no questions, I think, you know who is hosting us, right? Did we thank them since morning when we started? Did we? Did we or did we not? Huh? We did it? Yes. Yeah, so I think it's a great thing that cost Uniha and the government for that fact that they have made this possible, right? I think we're getting great stuff here, right? Yes. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so we're getting those great stuff from here, and we're going to build solution from what we are learning here, but also opportunity to collaborate and network and all that. I think we should be grateful, right? And as entrepreneur, gratefulness, is that such a word? It is. There is. Oh, awesome. I thought I made it up. Yeah, so it will be part of our life, huh? Yeah, otherwise we die very young. Yeah, you need to appreciate, because you understand how variable things are. You never take things for granted when you're an entrepreneur, because you know how hard it is, huh? So we are always grateful at heart, because we know how much it actually takes to make things happen. I think that's the essence. Like, so it teaches you to be grateful because you know things doesn't just happen. Someone has to make them happen. And it should be very clear for all of us. We should be very aware of that. Nothing just happens. Yeah, so we are grateful for the government, great job that they're doing to make things like this happen, but also African EU to make this happen. And for each one of you here today, I should be closing. Can I get two people to share their personal testimonies for today? And when you come here, what you're expecting, and right now, if somehow your expectation like 2% have been met, please, two people. I'll suggest a lady and a guy, but if you don't get a lady and a guy, we'll go with any. Two people? Can I see two people, please? Wow. Wow. Guys, come on. Seriously? No. Not now. Can I? Okay, maybe I was not clear. Like, I just want you to share, when you came here in the morning, you had expectations, right? Right now, anyone who thinks like somehow my expectations like not 100% met, but maybe you are going there. And maybe you share what expectations that is and what actually we got for today's session. Please. Let's just do this quick so that we can continue with the other session in our phones. Quick, please. Oh, seriously, I'll point. Yeah. You go fast. Yes, you. If it's zero expectation, you say I had like expectation, but nothing has been met. That's also a response, right?
I can just sit and say.
Yeah, sure. If that makes you comfortable.
Okay, I had a great time. First of all, I got to network with different people, so it was a great session. And I had some new learnings I learned, and I got some new networking and probably future partnerships. I think from 100, it's beyond that. So I hope that tomorrow will be even better and more expectations.
Wow,
Yeah.
this is awesome. Okay, next.
Can I go?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. So for me, I'm very new in this industry since I don't have any background on tech or anything. But I have been learning and seeing how other people are doing out there, and I'm so interested. So being in this situation or seeing a co-founder of Chile Direct speaking direct about ed technology and all that, it's really, really inspiring, and they didn't give us the whole picture of the journey, how it was, but I'm sure it's very, very fruitful, and we're gonna learn a lot. And for expectation, well, I would say beyond 100, or almost 100, but it is in a good stage. So I would say like A+ or something. But again, I'm looking forward for tomorrow on the area of fintech specifically, because I'm so interested in that area. Yes.
Nashukuru kwa muda wenu, tunakaribisha tena kesho saa 4 kamili sharp tutaanza. Asanteni kwa kuja. Kwa leo tumeishia hapo.
Hujamaliza kabisa kama nani?
Nishajitambulisha tu. Naitwa Faith. Kutakuwa na
Yeah, yes.
Huh?